Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and Twitch. So a very good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community. And without you, we couldn't make the show each week. So a huge thank you as always. Coming up on the podcast, it's still all to play for. Wembley is one home win away after that cagey 0-0 draw with West Brom at the Hawthorns. We're going to review that game and we look ahead to the return leg on Friday night, by far our biggest game of the season. My name is Martin Starke, and joining me this evening, Steve Grant is the owner of Saints Web. Alfie House is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen is the writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 279 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start, as always, with a shout out to our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support our show. For anybody in our Francis Benali and Mick Shannon tiers, we're in the process of sending out your exclusive TSP merch, and that comes as part of your membership. We're going to need some information from you before we can send these out, so do head over to your Patreon inbox. You'll find a message from us there that will explain what happens next. And can I just say thanks to everybody who joined us for the live show at Steamtown Brewery in Eastleigh last week. I think we all really enjoyed it. Thanks again to Steamtown for hosting us, and as well as all the usual end of season bits, we were able to answer some of your burning questions and look ahead to next season as well. It's all on YouTube if you'd like to have a look and catch up. And we've shared the photo album. All the pictures from the event are on our Facebook page, so have a search for @TotalSaintsPod. Going to put all those links in the podcast show notes, and you'll find them in the YouTube description as well. So for the first time since 2011, the first leg of both Championship playoff semi-finals ended goalless. Not the best day for football, but I think we'll take it. Alfie, you were there. Going to start with you. I think Saints will probably be more pleased with that result.
Yeah, I think they probably will be. I think the game pretty much went as I expected it to, if I'm being completely honest. I think I obviously predicted a 1-1 draw, and given on the quality of a couple of the chances, it could have easily been that. Alex McCarthy had a really good game in goal, obviously, apart from the one moment where he sort of left Taylor Bellis a bit high and dry in the box. Did excellent, 2 really good saves. And Ross Stewart was unlucky not to score with his first ever shot for the club 10 months after signing, when his deflected effort was saved really well by Alex Palmer. So I think that it's probably a fair result. It was obviously a hot day. I think there's quite a few complaints from Russell Martin and Flyn Downes in the post-match media that the pitch was a bit sticky and they couldn't really play their football. And I think they're hoping that it'll be a little bit better on Friday. Obviously, I didn't touch the turf, can't comment on that, but that's something that they mentioned a couple of times. So I think 1-0. I think it's 0-0 draw is totally fair enough. It could have easily been 1-0, could have been more. They had to weather out a really, really, I suppose, nervy first 15 minutes where I thought that things were going to go south quite quickly, to be honest with you. There was so much pressure on the box, but when it came to the 6-yard box and just slightly outside, they actually managed to defend it. They didn't stop anything up until then, but they weathered that. They got through that period, and then it was a pretty even game from there. So I think bringing it home, now it's just a straight shootout. It's 2 cup finals, effectively, 2 knockout games. Both of them start 0-0. And I think Southampton will feel pretty confident about progressing. But I think it's a good result. 5th in the league. They've got a good home record. They're a good team. They had a good atmosphere behind them. And they've come out of it unscathed. So I don't think they can have too many complaints.
I was slightly nervous when we didn't touch the ball for the first 8 minutes. Glen, obviously playing with that 5 at the back. I think we kind of touched on that last week. We might have called that. We got the clean sheet. A good game plan for you. Did it work?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could tell from the first minute that the game was, the first one of 2. It just seemed like both teams were set up for 180 minutes almost, and that this was a preamble, if you like, for what was to come. The back 3 I thought were excellent. There's a lot of aerial threat from West Brom. But ironically, they haven't got a massive striker, but they put a lot of balls into the box. They got the long throw-ins. The corners look well rehearsed and things like that. And the back 3 was there. I mean, we didn't have a back 3 in the league game up there, but we had Jack Stevens on the pitch, so there was more height in the team than there normally is, and all 3 of the centre halves showed up well with the aerial stuff coming into the box, as did Alex McCarthy. He made a couple of saves, but he was coming for every throw in or virtually every throw in and plucking those out the air with no fuss. So that was a really good part of the display. The only real sort of like danger was down West Brom's right, where Tom Fellows was decent. Ryan Manning had a few problems with him, and then when we kind of changed formation in the second half, Stevens had problems with him as well. And that seemed to be the only sort of like real route to goal that West Brom had. And I was a bit, I don't know, I kind of feel like I would have been a little bit disappointed in if I was a West Brom fan at the lack of intent. Like when the crosses did come in, there was only ever sort of one player in the box, that sort of thing. Okay, they picked him out once in the first half, particularly, but they weren't really busting the guts to try and get that goal to bring to St Mary's. So no, overall, I think our setup and our plan worked pretty well, and I agree with Alfie. I think 0-0's a really decent result, and I certainly feel a lot more confident going into the second game than I would have done if we were 1-0 down.
Steve, you were there. I mean, it was a warm afternoon, that's for sure. Do you kind of feel like we've got another gear or two to go through on Friday?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think both sides kind of gave it a go in terms of trying to play at some sort of pace, but I think the conditions, both sort of aerially and underfoot, kind of put paid to it a little bit. I mean, West Brom they did, in fairness to the ground staff, they did water the pitch heavily, sort of pre-match. So it wasn't for the want of trying. It wasn't like they deliberately left it out in the sun to bake. It was just the way it happened. The first sort of spell of proper hot weather we've had all year. And yeah, I mean, it was sweaty, presumably sweaty on the pitch. It was pretty sweaty up at the back of the stands as well. So yeah, I think ultimately, you'd think we're probably slightly more satisfied than West Brom are, given the sort of difference between their home form and away form. You'd think that they probably had an eye on taking something to hold on to back to St Mary's, and we've managed to stop them doing that. But it's 180 minutes that we've played at the Hawthorns and ultimately defended pretty well in both of those, I think. I mean, I was a little bit concerned given that we presented the ball to them 3 seconds after we kicked off. That was kind of a sort of bit of a sort of forebearer of how things might have panned out, but we rode that sort of early storm eventually, and yeah, we got a grip on the game for the most part. I think we were fairly controlled, but it was one of those where I think with the heat and the obviously where you're playing a central striker who's very clearly third choice at best, and basically there was a lack of confidence in putting the ball up to Mara to hold on to. In fairness, the sort of 2 or 3 times he did actually get involved, he was fine. Decent layoffs, one little turn around the corner that created a bit of space for Downes, I think it was. But other than that, he was left a little bit isolated because we put so much of our play down the wings with the wing backs, who both got forward really well. I thought Manning was very good going forward. Put a lot of dangerous balls into the box, but unfortunately their defenders were generally in the right place at the right time most of the time. But yeah, I mean, it's promising. I think if we're under the assumption that Shay Adams comes back into the side Friday, then yeah, I think that probably makes us favourites, maybe strong favourites. I mean, bookies would probably say strong. I think Saints fans knowing what we're like, probably somewhat less so.
A little bit cautious.
Yeah.
Glen, I'll come to you in just a moment about our lack of quality going forward and get your thoughts on Mara. Alfie, at the live event, we talked a bit about Alex McCarthy and how he could potentially have a role to play. And that performance, those saves, it's going to help his confidence no end.
Yeah, I think I probably undersold him a little bit because I was just trying to be a little bit cautious at the live event about saying, that he's an upgrade on anybody coming into the team. But I think what you do see with him is, I think Glenn quite rightly pointed out, it's just control of the area and just confidence when the ball comes into his box. And whether it's a big punch and it's clear or whether he actually catches it, just seems to always find a way to deal with a few things. And yes, there's been exceptions, obviously, games against Leicester and things like that. But he hasn't really put a foot wrong since he's come in. I think he looks pretty good. He's obviously got a lot of experience, as we said on Thursday at the live show. And that, like you said, that'd be brilliant for his confidence. And it's now getting to the point where we've asked Russell Martin all season, what's happening with Che Adams, what's happening with Stuart Armstrong and the other two guys out of contract. I sort of want to know what's happening with Alex McCarthy now, because I still feel the same way. I'm still pretty sure he'll leave, but it feels like it's something worth asking now and just sort of checking in on that, because he's obviously got something to offer this team. And I suppose when you lose your first team goalkeeper and someone comes in, I think we're all a bit worried. But I think right now there's probably no need to be concerned. Like we said, there's the odd just maybe slight lapse of concentration with the ball at his feet, but it hasn't really been a problem yet. They've gotten away with one or two moments that have been, a problem, and they've done well. So yeah, good for him, and hopefully he keep that up in the next game, because I'm pretty sure he'll be needed.
I did laugh when Flyn Downes referred to him as a joke of a goalkeeper afterwards. I think he meant it as a term of endearment. And I was thinking we've definitely referred to him as a joke of a goalkeeper on here in the past couple of years. But they do his confidence no good. Glenn, were you surprised to see Mara starting? Another chance for him to try and prove that he can turn up and play?
Bearing in mind that Che Adams was injured, then no, I'm not really surprised that he got chosen. It's basically a choice between him and Kamaldeen Sulemana, isn't it? If Ross Stewart's not fit enough to start. So, I mean, Sulemana's only played 20 minutes up front. So Mara is the most logical fit, whether you think he's good enough or not. But no, I wasn't altogether surprised. No, that's not really fair. I was disappointed to see his name in the starting lineup, put it that way. But once I realised that Che Adams wasn't even on the bench, then it becomes less surprising. But I mean, I'd say Joe Tessam is a better judge than me. And you, I don't know if anyone listened. I don't usually flag other people's podcasts, but the Adam and Joe podcast on the way home was worth a listen, because Joe Tessam basically sums up Mara pretty well, and I'll let you go and check that out. Basically saying that he's just not good enough, and he doesn't seem to have the attitude to almost want to be good enough. There was one incident that stood out for me with the ball got played over to the left hand side, and the ball was to Mara's left, and Kyle Bartley was to his right, and it was just simply a case of a simple shield the ball, and just hold on to it and maybe draw a foul or wait for other players to get involved. And 1 second later, Kyle Bartley's got the ball. He's not even made a challenge, and he's walking up the pitch with it. And I'm just thinking, what's happened there? He's just, for a relatively big guy, he just doesn't seem to understand that you've got to put your body in the way sometimes, and you've got to be physical, even if it is a big centre half coming in with you. And to me, he just doesn't do enough. And as Steve said, when he gets involved, sometimes he's not too bad, but it just doesn't get involved enough for me. I don't think he doesn't seem to show for the ball much, and and that lack of physicality for a player of his size playing that position it's just never gonna work. So the club's got a decision to make in the summer, really, depending on what division we're in, as to whether he's worth persevering with. Can they get any money for him? But yeah, he's one that I wouldn't bat an eyelid if he left, to be honest. But at the end of the day, he's played. We haven't lost a game, and the ideal scenario for next week is that Che Adams starts the game and Ross Stewart comes on. So there you go.
I thought you were going to say that Joe Tesson would be a better option up front. I wasn't sure.
Maybe a couple of years ago, not now.
Alfie, good to see Ross Stewart getting a bit of extra time as well, a little bit longer than the previous one. And as you said, that deflected shot from 20 yards could have been the dream afternoon. Yeah,
I think so. He came on with 19 or 20 minutes left of regulation time, and then sort of 6 or 7 more. I think this is probably the performance where we saw more of him than the last sort of 4 cameos, where he didn't really get into the game. He wasn't really expected to. But I thought what we saw from him this time was a lot of movement, a real desire to actually make runs, get on the ball. I think the dynamic of the attack changed when he came on. And to be fair, he obviously came on with 2 other players at the same time as well, so it probably was going to. But I just felt like there was, like I say, just a real desire and real want to make something happen, want to play. And Russell Martin, when we've asked Russell Martin every single week, the answer's always been, he's been banging on my door asking to start a game, to play 60, to play 70, and they've really had to hold him back. They really had to just make sure that they take their time with him. And I think you do see a bit of that when he plays, to be fair. I think he does want it. So he's a real option now. Like Glen said, it's absolutely perfect. They can just start Che Adams. And if he's fit to do 65, 70, then you've got Ross Stewart to finish the game. So I don't think there's a problem now in terms of those attacking options. And it will just be written for him to get that goal. So unlucky. It's a brilliant save from Palmer. It really is. I don't know how he stopped it. It would have obviously been a bit of fortune for Ross as well. But he's got a chance to be a hero. Against all the odds, I suppose. So nice to see, and good luck to him.
And the other changes, Steve, how much of that kind of last 20 minutes was us just going for the draw when obviously Manning came off and I think Brooks came on as well, didn't he?
Well, it was Brooks and Fraser. So, we switched back to a back four with Stevens playing that left back role, similar to the league game up at their place in February. I'm not sure that was necessarily even playing for a draw. I think that was just trying something a little bit different. It was because Fraser seemed to get a lot of space out on that left flank in the 20 odd minutes that he had on the pitch. And Brooks was playing a little bit more centrally. He wasn't quite on the right wing, but he was just tucked inside a little bit, almost in a sort of number 10 role again. And he was okay. Wasn't quite as involved as I think many of us would have liked. But I think when you've got WalkerPeters as the attacking outlet on that flank, you can afford to have the guy on that side of the midfield tucking in slightly to just give us a few more bodies in there. Fraser was involved quite a lot. Won us a couple of corners. Final ball wasn't quite there, and that kind of applies to everybody really, in that every ball into the box was either really well dealt with defensively or just wasn't quite in the right place. So some slight sort of tinkering with the radar on those ahead of Friday, and I think we're pretty well set, to be honest.
Going to get on and preview Friday in just a moment. I mentioned it was the first time since 2011 that the first leg of both championship playoff semi-finals ended goalless. Who went on to win it that year, Steve?
Oh Christ, can't remember.
Swansea. Norwich and QPR had already gone up, and Shane Long scored twice for Reading in the final, but they lost. So I was just trying to grasp at a few straws there and the connections. I want to do Player of the Week. I think there's an obvious candidate. Alfie, who would you put up first? Who got your biggest rating when you did your reviews?
I didn't actually do the ratings this week. It was George. I don't know what he gave as the highest rated player. The obvious candidate you're referring to is Alex McCarthy, so I suppose I'll just put my foot in and put that one down now. Good performance, saving both halves, kept Saints in the game, I suppose, to a degree, just like their goalkeeper did with Flyn Downes and with Ross Stewart as well. I'll go for Alex McCarthy.
There were a couple of others, Glen, that might have stood out.
Flyn Downes, I thought, was excellent. Picked up a booking, but he had to do that. That was someone else sold him down the river.
Smallbone's fault.
Yeah, someone else sold him down the river. But yeah, I thought he was excellent, driving forward from midfield. He seems to be showing a lot more in an attacking sense recently, with just driving with the ball or that chance that he had. He showed he's not a striker because he should have taken that first time. But when he took the touch, it allowed the guy to sort of get the block in. And Adam Armstrong should have done better with the rebound, I think, as well. It was something I don't think we've discussed yet. When it came down, and he kind of does
tried
what
to
he
foot it, didn't he? It was odd.
When
it's coming over your shoulder like that, I don't think you can really be too precise. It's difficult.
Yeah, the first time I saw it, it looked like he was trying to lash at it, as he tends to do, and just not made a decent connection. But I do think there was an element of two minds in it. Do I lash at it? Do I side foot it? And he ended up kind of doing a sort of hybrid of both, and it missed anyway. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Player of the Week, to me, Flyn Downes was the best outfield player out there for us. Any
of the defenders, Steve? We kept a clean sheet.
I thought WalkerPeters was very good. Given that he was often doubled up on in the attackings when he was defending, it was interesting that obviously where we were playing a 5 for the first hour and a bit, the fullbacks were defending much wider. So as a result, he's defending outside the width of the penalty area, which therefore meant that he was actually able to stop some crosses coming in, which is, I mean, as you can probably remember, is a bit of a bugbear of mine. And he was pretty good at that. Manning a little bit less successful on the other flank, but that was basically because Fellows is seemingly 2-footed. Whereas the lad on their left flank was absolutely desperate to get everything onto his right foot.
Yeah.
But yeah, WalkerPeters is very good. I thought Smallbone had a very curious game in that there was quite a lot that he did really well. One thing that probably wasn't picked up on TV was the number of really good runs he made into space between the lines, and the ball just never came, from whether that was from a defender or from Downes or a Rebo dropping deep.
People just not finding him, or not
well,
seeing
they
him.
just didn't look up, didn't look up, didn't see him, didn't play the pass, and played something safe either sideways or maybe backwards. But then on the flip side, there were quite a few occasions where he was played the ball to feet, but had a defender up behind him, and he was just really flat-footed, and the defender always got stepped in ahead of him, and we surrendered possession quite a few times in the first half because of that.
I thought Smallbone,
but
I thought Smallbone faded big time in the second half. I think he got to about 60 minutes and then got really tired, and then the flat-footed stuff that you're talking about there seemed to happen.
This was first half.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Like when West Brom were properly sort of putting the pressure on us in that sort of from the edge of the centre circle up to the edge of our area sort of period for certainly the first 15 minutes, probably the last 15 minutes of the first half as well. That was when we kept turning possession over in our half, and it was almost all because of the same thing, either a slightly loose pass or the person supposed to be receiving the pass was on their heels, and West Brom were just a little bit more alert to it. So yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where you can certainly with a bit more energy in the cooler conditions of Friday night, then you'd like to think that players would be a little bit more alert on those.
All right, so we'll go with Alex McCarthy, Flyn Downes, and Carl Walker-Peters, then the vote for the TSP Player of the Week. It's always good to hear from the opposition fans. Our old friend Chris Hall from the Albion Analysis podcast, he sent us a video. He's playing in the charity match at the Hawthorns tonight, so he couldn't join us live, but this is what he made of the game.
In terms of the game, I thought I thought Albion started very strongly. Southampton came massively into it at the very end of the first half, and certainly the start of the second half. But I thought once we saw off your initial surge, I thought we were probably the better side over the course of the game. I thought we were a little bit unfortunate to probably not go away with a lead, and that could potentially be our undoing in the second leg because it's going to be extremely difficult. But I think Corbrand's comments afterwards were interesting. He seems to be ready to go for it in the second leg. I think he's very wary of the idea of sitting back and defending against you guys, because you obviously have a great deal of quality and can dominate the ball. And I don't think we will be passive in the second leg. I don't think that's what you're going to see from us. So it'll be an interesting second leg. It's obviously very delicately poised, and I think we're very much in it. But you go into it as favourites, but only slight, in my opinion.
Well, all that stands in the way of a trip to Wembley in the playoff final is a Friday night under the lights at a sold-out St Mary's Stadium. What could possibly go wrong? Alfie, how much of an edge will that home advantage be? Because it's not been great at times this season, let's be honest, but you kind of feel like the fans can certainly play their part on Friday.
Yeah, I think you say it's not been great at times this season. I suppose that probably is true, but at the same time, I think it's been a lot better, obviously, this season. It has been, in my experience, before. I think that it's obviously going to be really important for people to get behind the team. I think you saw in a couple of moments at the Hawthorns where some of this passing around the back, it does nearly lead to problems and you get panicky. But at the end of the day, at this point in the season, when we've just got 2 games to go into the Premier League, you just have to accept that that's going to happen. That's the way they're tutored to play, and they're not going to stop doing that. And just have to try and stay 100% behind the team. So I think the manager and and maybe some of the players, I think this week will stress how important it is that they feel that supporters stick with them as they have done on the road all season, as they have done at home as well. And I think they would really appreciate people's support on Friday night. I know that for a fact. So hopefully it's going to be an amazing atmosphere. It'll be obviously sold out, and West Brom, they made it a tough place to play. It was a good atmosphere on the weekend. I enjoyed the trip there, and we've got to do the same thing on Friday night. We've got to make it intimidating for them, make it difficult for them. I'm sure they will. It's going to be really important for Southampton to start better than they did on the weekend. I think that's for sure. If you start the way they did, sort of 15 minutes of constant pressure like that, it could get a little bit nervy, but they've got to make it count. It's just all going to be about managing the occasion at this point. I think Southampton, they are, in my opinion, clearly they are the better team. That they can be the better team. If they play to their best, they will win. But they just have to manage the occasion, have to make sure it doesn't get on top of them, as we've seen a couple of times, a bit like deer in headlights this season. But they can now look back at that bank of, I suppose, the two Leeds games and the trips to Hawthorns now and know that they can handle it, they can do it, and that's what they've got to do. So I agree with him that I think Saints are favourites. I think they're probably slight favourites as well. I don't think it's going to be a foregone conclusion, but I feel pretty confident.
We have got some big game experience to draw on a little bit now. Is it going to be about patience, Glenn? Is that going to be the key?
Well, I hope we score early, obviously, because that would make West Brom come out a bit. I was interested by Chris's comments about Corberan's approach, because if they had got if they had won 1-0, it would have been low block Central on Friday, and that would have been a nightmare. So personally, I regardless of what he says, I still wouldn't be at all surprised if we go there and they've got 9 behind the ball at all times. It really wouldn't surprise me, though. Their best bet of scoring a goal is obviously pressing us. So it will be really interesting to see what approach they take at various points in the game. And if the score changes, then obviously that approach will alter. So I take issue with the fact he said they deserve to win, because I don't think they did. I think it was a draw, absolutely fairly. So I'm not take a bit of issue with that. But yeah, I mean it will be a case of patience, and the fans have got to be patient as well. And if you can't get behind the boys in this game, which is basically a cup final in its own right, then what you're doing there, that you have to be supportive of the team, whatever happens. And so I hope there's not an exodus on 83 minutes if the game's level. There is extra time, so stick around to the end. And
away goals don't count, do they?
No.
Away goals don't count. So yeah, it will be an exercise in patience, I'm sure, because I honestly just cannot see Corberan sending out a team to come flying at us in the first sort of 10 minutes like they did at West Brom. But yeah, time will tell. But yeah, it's going to be a nervy game. If it goes to half time at 0-0, then you're getting into the territory of one mistake loses you the game and throws the season in the bin. So yeah, we are going to have to be patient, but it would just be much better for everyone's heart if we could get an early goal. And I always feel that we're much more likely to win a game once we're gone in front.
We've seen quite a bit of West Brom this season, Steve. We've kind of agreed that we've got a couple of extra gears that we can go through. Have we seen the best of them, do you think? They're going to obviously come and try and nick a 1-0 win, but have we seen all that they've got to offer, really? There's no surprises.
I think so. I don't think there's any sort of major tactical adjustments that they've used in other games this season that we've not come up against. It will just be a case of, okay, can they take advantage of their strengths against our weaknesses, which is obviously our defensive concentration at times. I would say is probably our sort of biggest Achilles heel. But at the end of the day, if we're on the front foot for the vast majority of the game, then suddenly that becomes less of an issue. So I think ultimately our plan A is going to be to go out there and dominate the game and make sure that West Brom don't have the opportunity to kind of spring anything on us. And if we can pass around their press, as we kind of got to grips with it eventually on in the first game, then I think there's then a few sort of pockets of space for the more creative players to get involved in and hopefully create some chances for someone to finish, because obviously chances were at a premium on Sunday. I think probably not likely to be that much more open, I wouldn't have thought. And I mean, as Glenn said, I mean, the closer you get to the second half of it and it's still 0-0, then I think chances are even more of a premium, because, as you say, nobody wants to make that sort of season-ending mistake. But we'll see. I mean, maybe it'll be a case of like a basketball game where it goes end to end and it's utter chaos. You never know, but I think I would imagine that while both managers want to try and control the game, I think Courbrand's obviously a lot more happy sort of sitting in and counter-attacking, but I think it'll be a steady pace initially. And then middle of the first half, we might pick it up a little bit once we've got our feet under the table, I suppose. But yeah, I don't think I'm expecting it to be sort of all action.
What's been said about Che Adams, Alfie? Because we can't really read too much into what Russell Martin says.
No,
I think you've highlighted this a few times, haven't you, when he's talked about players that might be on the bench or might be back in the squad and that they're nowhere to be seen. So that injury was obviously worse than we thought, but this could potentially be his last game at St Mary's.
It's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. But again, unfortunately, the only information we get is off, obviously, Russell Martin when he speaks. And he said that he's hopeful that Che Adams will be available on Friday, but we've heard that story a million times. I'm obviously probably just being naive, but I do believe him. I think he probably will be back for Friday. Hopefully, because I think they just miss him so much. But yeah, he obviously had a tight calf. Just a slight concern after Leeds that was obviously slightly worse. I think he didn't train much last week at all, really. But there's 4 or 5 days, maybe 3 training days in between yesterday at West Brom and the second leg. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that he'll be back. And Adam Armstrong looks like he's okay as well. The club Twitter have confirmed after what looked like quite a nasty gash on the face, which
I didn't even get that.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that during the game. So I mean, there's 2 possibilities. He's either taken studs to the face, or I think someone said it was an elbow. But I don't know how it's caused that cut.
Because I remember he went off. I remember seeing him go off to the sideline. The ref sort of sent him across when we'd won a corner. So I assume it must have been in the immediate build up to that. But yeah, I don't remember any particular incident that could have caused it.
But there was one particular camera angle where it looks like it's a real sort of hole in the face. But I think actually when you see it, it's been patched up. It's just a slight gash, and he'll obviously be fine to play on Friday. So hopefully him and
he might have a mask on.
That's a good point.
We've not seen a player in a mask for a while. Glenn, I mean, what percentage fit does Che need to be on the pitch to play? I mean, he hasn't got to be 100%, has he?
Instead of Sekumara, 5%. He can have a full. He can have a full body cast on, and he can still.
His last game playing at St Mary's in front of the home crowd, he's going to want. If he's like that at 85%, 90%, he's going to want to play, isn't he? He's going to be gagging to get on.
Yeah, I would have thought that, as we said earlier, it will be can we get an hour out of him?
Yeah.
Can we get enough out of Che for Ross Stewart to play the second part of the game? Because you'd think with Ross Stewart, you'd probably be thinking now, okay, flops. You got to factor extra time into that as well. So if it's still 0-0, do you if Che starts, do you let him go a little bit longer? Do you try and get him to 70, 75 or whatever? But it's a difficult one. And I mean, Russell Martin isn't going to give it away, to the opposition, whether Che's going to start or not, because, when they saw the team sheet, the West Brom centre-halves would have been absolutely delighted that he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Regardless of who comes in, because
Che
Adams over the last couple of months has been really, really good and has been a right handful. So in the main, no, I don't think he has to be. Certainly doesn't have to be 100% fit, but he's got to. We've seen it with Che Adams this year. or this season, he's either very good or he can be very bad. And it's just, does he have enough confidence in whatever injury it is to be able to go out and perform to somewhere near his best? But I mean, I'm interested as to what formation we go with as well.
Yeah.
Do we go for 3 at the back, or do we go to the 4-3-3 again? I suspect we will keep it the same. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one, because that obviously affects how the forwards play. Do you have two forwards central, or do you have, I don't know, someone like Brooks or Fraser coming into the team and playing wide? So so the way we line up front will be very interesting for a couple of reasons.
Do you think it'd be the formation that finished that game, Steve? Do you think we'll start with 4 at the back?
No, I suspect not. I think we'll go with the wing backs again, just because we've now had, a game and basically 2/3, maybe even 3/4, with the wing backs, and looked pretty good against 2 of the better sides in this division. Whereas previously we'd gone 2.5 games with the 4-3-3 and looked a little bit lost. So yeah, I think we'll stick with the wing backs to begin with, and then depending on how things progress, might see a similar set of changes as we saw in the first leg.
You were nodding along, Alfie. Do you think it'd just be that one change maybe up front?
I suppose there is the element of how fit are they and how ready are they to go again. But with 5 days in between, that shouldn't be a problem. So, yeah, and also I suppose the point where even if someone's not, as Glen said, you do it anyway. So, yeah, I think maybe one change, Che back in for Sekou Mara, and I'd be pretty happy with that. I think, like Glen, I think said in sort of the opening statement, I thought all 3 centre backs did well against West Brom in the first game. I mean, I thought Taylor came under a little bit of pressure in the second half, and obviously particularly at the start as well. And there was a couple of moments where Jack Stevens was a little bit poor in possession, and maybe some passes went out of play and things like that. Bednarek was excellent, but you just trust all 3 of them. I think in a big moment, I think the manager trusts them as well, which is obviously critical. You aren't going to take Flyn Downes out. Joe Rebo and Will Smallbone are your best midfielders, with no question. And I don't think Ryan Fraser or David Brooks have done enough to say, I need to start. They can still be options. So yeah, I think it probably makes sense to keep it that way. But then that being said, you never know, do you? Because I know Russell Martin obviously likes to spring a surprise on a manager, doesn't he? I think when he thinks the manager has him figured out, he sometimes feels he has to do something to change that. And to be fair, he's had good success doing that. A couple of times when he has changed things around last minute, it's gone all right. They've got good big results. So, I wonder maybe if there's a bit of that in the back of his mind, maybe just try and spring something on Carlos Cour brand. But they always say that they want to play the game that they want to play, and they want the team that people focus on to be Southampton, and not what West Brom have done. So I think if you keep it the same way and you're just better than them, then I don't think you need to make a change.
I think the quote from Carlos Corberan, which I kind of picked up on, was normally I have 15 minutes to prepare for the second half, and now we've got 4 days. I just worry, Glenn, is there a danger that we will overthink this game? I mean, we're kind of like wishing the week away, aren't we? But we're going into it. We know what we need to know. Nobody's going to get any fitter or any better. We've just got to pick the best 11 and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's it was a 2-legged game, and now it's a one-off game, and we're at home. We've got a good home record. We've beaten them at home, so yeah. I mean, we got to talk about something. So there is always a danger of overthinking it, but the bottom line is we've got a home game to get to Wembley, and we're not playing Leicester. We're not playing a Premier League side. We're playing a league that's playing a team that's finished below us in the league this season. So we, in 3 games against West Brom, they've scored 1 goal, which was a scrappy effort from a free kick, I think, and someone ran it into the net. I don't really see as we've got anything to fear against West Brom. We can beat ourselves if we freeze on the day with the with the expectation and stuff like that. But that and that can happen, or they can do a job on us. But I think, in all things being equal, I don't think Corberan he's certainly not a genius manager. He's a very good manager, but it's not like we're coming up against a Jose Mourinho or something like that. So we just have to play the game and hope that hope that the players perform and get it right. And Russell Martin doesn't go too mad trying to spring a surprise on. He's done that in the first game. We don't want any more of them.
No.
So no, go out there. All things being equal, we should be okay.
Yeah,
but it's down to the players to carry out the plans on the pitch on Friday night.
I will say that I'm going to be a bag of nerves. I'm sure that some of you, I don't know, you've been there before in these situations, but I mean, this is the biggest game in for the club in what, maybe genuinely maybe 6-7 years potentially in terms of what it means.
Probably since Cup final.
Exactly, yeah, since the Cup final in 2017. So, what it means for the club and just the implications it obviously has on the way that the leadership can build for next season, or the way they can't. For players as well, for their futures, and for the manager as well. Given how much they've sort of put into the year, it's such a big occasion. And like Glenn says, the only way they can really lose is if they beat themselves. And they just have to hope that they open up, they play free, they feel the support of everyone behind them, and they do what we know they can do to get over the line.
What do you know about the preparations this week, Alfie? Is it going to be just about trying to keep it as normal as possible? It's a home game, it's Friday, it's a team we've beaten. Let's just not do anything out of the norm. They're not going to be going out for a Chinese again this week.
No, they didn't go for a Chinese. They went for a seafood anyway, I think. But what he did say was they weren't going to have a day off. Basically, after they had a couple of days off after Leeds, and from then on, it was pretty much in training all the time, whether that's actually physical work, whether it's just sort of study or your mind things. So I think it'll be a pretty full-on week. Obviously, there's no time for the rest. There's no point resting now. You get the job done, then you've got 6 weeks off to live the dream. So I think they'll be in pretty much every day. They're training at St Mary's on Thursday, I believe, as just a bit of stadium experience, get used to the pitch again, ready for the match on Friday. But other than that, I don't think there's any abnormalities. I think it's just go forward as usual.
And when do you speak to the manager? Is that Friday?
Thursday, 4 p.m. Thursday, 4 p.m. Yeah. So
right.
After they've trained on the pitch at St Mary's.
Nice. All right, let's do some score predictions. If you're watching along live, by all means, chuck your score prediction in. I must just say that for the first time in a while, Alfie, Steve, and myself all predicted a draw. So we actually picked up a point, which has not happened for absolutely ages. So, Steve, I'll give you the honour of going first. How do you see this one working out?
Oh, God.
Hang on, before we go anywhere, is this a prediction at 90 minutes?
This is
at the end of 120, surely.
Word. All right, yeah. So the end, yeah. Okay, so barring any penalty shootouts, I guess. Otherwise, that just gets a bit complicated.
No, I don't think he's going to need extra time. I think I got to have confidence in the better players. So I'm going to go for 2-0 win.
Okay, Glen, are you thinking it's going to be extra time then? Are you that worried?
No, not necessarily. Nothing would surprise me. I go into this completely open, but I've got to put my neck on the block here. So I think we'll score, but I can't see West Brom not scoring. I just think that is that sort of occasion that'll be nervy. So maybe we go 2-0 up and think the job's done. Then they get a goal back, and there's 10 minutes of sheer hell at the end of the 90, just waiting for them to equalise, whilst we pass the ball around the 6-yard box. So yeah, I think it'll be a nervy one, but I'll go for a 2-1 win.
And Alfie?
I'll let you into a little secret of the printing press. So we've obviously got deadlines that we have to fill newspapers by. And Friday night is a notoriously difficult one to get a late deadline. So we are able to carry a full match report if the game finishes in normal time. If the game goes to extra time, there's absolutely no time to fit a report into the paper, and we have to think of something else. We have to have 2 papers planned. So I'm really hoping it's finished in normal time, because I don't want to have to deal with that. So I'm going to go with a very, very nervy 1-0 win and hope they can get the job done.
and you get an earlier night.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 3-1, and my science behind that is the last time that the first legs, I think we mentioned, was 2011, wasn't it? They both finished 0-0. It was Swansea who eventually went up, and they won their second leg 3-1. So that's where I plucked 3-1 from. So it's not that I'm any more confident than anybody else. So keep those score predictions coming in. And we'll see how it all works out. Thank you for watching this week's episode. Don't forget you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. We're at Total Saints Pod there. You can drop us a DM on any of the socials, or you can email us, share your nerves via the website if there's something you want to get off your chest. Don't forget as well, you can check out the merch store which we've got going on. That's shop.totalsaints.co.uk. And we're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers on there, ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And each of the tiers comes with different perks. There's weekly shout outs for the patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tier. So thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe, and Mike E. They're all in our Francis Benali tier. And also thanks to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood, who are in our Mick Shannon tier. Next week, we will find out who wins the TSP FPL. Good luck, everybody, with the final weekend there. Thanks to Steve. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you to Glen. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back here for another live stream. Hopefully not the last one of the season. And that will be on Sunday, the 19th. And we're going to start at 7:15.